listen to the haters, man, I treat them like the enemy. Had a couple traitors, man, but now they know the penalty.
Do you guys prefer Fortnite or Roblox? Neither. Neither. Okay. The Serial Killer You've Never Heard Of by MrBallen. Alright. I do love me. I gotta stop hovering. I do love me some serial killers.
They're coming
I should probably rephrase that. I love learning about them, and I am intrigued by them and what makes them tick and what makes them think and what makes them do the things that they do and what caused them to mentally break to where they take the actions that they take. I love learning about this kind of stuff. Man, I spent the better half of my youth, like I said, doing book reports, projects, research, all this shit on a slew of different serial killers, mass murderers, and stuff like that. And I'm not the only one like that, man. It's generally intriguing. People gravitate to this kind of stuff. I don't dislike Fortnite because it's toxic as fuck, Liam. That Fortnite's not even close to being the most toxic game. That would probably go to Overwatch or League of Legends. I just don't like Fortnite because I think it's fucking garbage. Okay, let's get this started. The Serial Killer You've Never Heard Of. Let's check it out.
Today, we're going to look at one of the most unbelievable revenge stories I've ever come across, but you won't even know that it's a revenge story until the very end. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do. We upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, the next time the like button is out of town, secretly bug their house with cameras and microphones, and then live stream those feeds on the billboards in Times Square, New York. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
Yeah, matter of fact, I don't think I'm subscribed to MrBallen on this channel, so let me go ahead and fix that.
Okay, let's get into today's story. In the early evening of May 7th, 2008, a 65-year-old woman named Zivana Temolkoska walked around her kitchen inside of her apartment in the little southeastern European city of Kisevo. Kisevo is a quiet place at the base of this huge mountain in northern Macedonia, and while it's totally beautiful, it's utterly remote, and basically nothing really of note happens here. Zivana cleaned houses for a living, but on this particular day, she was on a day off, and so she was just kind of hanging out at her apartment, waiting for her adult son, named Zoran, to come home. It was a beautiful, warm evening that night, and so Zivana had the windows in the kitchen open as she walked around, making herself something to eat. And at some point, as she was doing this, she heard her phone ring. And so she grabbed it and answered, and she heard the sound of her friend on the other line. But her friend's voice sounded strange. It was strained and very uncomfortable, and she was asking Zivana if she was paying attention to the news right now. Did she have the radio on or the TV? And Zivana was like, no, why? And the friend would tell her that all over the news right now, there was this huge, terrible traffic accident that had happened in their town, and unfortunately, Zivana's son, Zoran, who she was waiting for to come home, was apparently involved in this accident.
Zoran's such a badass name. Zoran? Sounds like he'd be the guy to pull the sword out of that fucking stone. A fucking warrior. Anyways.
Zivana let out a strangled cry when she heard this, and then just dropped what she was using to make food and turned and ran out the door. And when she did, her neighbor who was outside saw her emerge and yelled out to her, hey, is everything okay? And Zivana, as she literally just continued running towards the road, she basically blurted out to the neighbor that her son was hurt and she was going to the hospital.
Yeah, dude, The Legend of Zoran. I'd watch that movie.
And this neighbor watched as Zivana just ran down the road, turned the corner, and disappeared. Zivana did not have a car of her own, and so literally she was going to run to the hospital to make sure her son was okay. A little while later, that same neighbor who had just watched Zivana disappear around the corner heard a knock on their door. And so the neighbor went to the door, they opened it up, and they were totally shocked at who they saw standing outside. It was Zivana's son, Zoran, who did not appear to be hurt in any way. But before the neighbor could ask any questions about this, Zoran, who looked visibly confused, said to the neighbor, hey, have you seen my mom? We were supposed to meet and have dinner together, and it's just totally unlike her to disappear without telling me where she was going. The neighbor just stared at Zoran for a second, having no idea what was going on here. And then the neighbor was like, well, wait a minute, Zoran, were you in a car accident? And Zoran's like, no, what are you talking about? And then the neighbor kind of filled Zoran in about how they had seen his mother run outside, and she had mentioned how her son had been in this car accident.
The mother is the actual victim here. Yeah. You use her son to get her out of the house and put herself in a compromising position. Let me guess. The mother wasn't seen again after this? Let's see.
And she literally ran to the hospital. Zoran was just as mystified by this as the neighbor was, and so Zoran just grabbed his phone and called the hospital to see if his mother was there. But when the hospital picked up, they would tell Zoran that his mother was not there, she had not been there all day, and two, even though they had heard reports about this car accident in town, there had not been any car accident victims brought to the hospital at all that day. And so
then why the fuck did it make the news so vigorously? Maybe because this is a nothing town and nothing of note ever happened, so even if it's like a fender bender, it's probably gonna make the local news.
So by the end of that night, when Zoran...
Country girl, have a good evening. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Zoran really had no idea what had happened to his mom, where she was, or, what was going on with this car accident thing. He just did the only thing he could think to do, which was go to the police and report his mother missing. 9 days later, on May 16th, when still Zivana was missing and the police had no idea what happened to her, there were no new leads, nothing. On this day, a 56-year-old reporter named Vlado Teneski, who actually happened to live not that far away from where Zivana lived, he got a call from one of his police sources. And the source would tell him that Zivana had actually just been found, even though this was not public information, and unfortunately, Zivana was dead. Her body, which had been beaten and strangled and stabbed, had been found wrapped up in plastic and dumped in this illegal dumping area not far from the town's football stadium. The source told Vlado that when her body was searched, they discovered she still had valuables on her person, and so that kind of ruled out the possibility...
Ruled out robbery. So this was just like cold-blooded, intentional murder.
...that this was a robbery gone wrong, which was the initial theory about what they were seeing. However, when police had done an initial probe into Zivana's life to figure out who this victim was, they discovered that she was just this poor old cleaning lady who had no enemies to speak of, and so it really just made no sense that she was the victim of such an obviously brutal and intimate murder that was...
Because I think that that's what it was, intimate. I think that it may have been a case of, this may have been like a lover's thing, maybe. Or something out of, like, jealousy.
Not financially motivated, at least not on the surface. Vlado thanked his source for all the information and then hung up. Vlado's source had sounded really shocked by this murder as he was telling Vlado, but now, as Vlado was sitting here thinking about what he had just been told, he wasn't really shocked as much as he was suspicious. He felt like something just was off about this murder. Maybe Zivana appeared to be this poor old cleaning lady with no enemies, but in reality, maybe that wasn't who she was. Maybe she was leading a secret life that got her killed. Or maybe she had stumbled upon something she was not supposed to see and that got her killed.
Maybe.
Vlado had no idea, but he just felt like, what? There's something off about this and it needs to be investigated. Now, Vlado had a reputation in town for being this very aggressive and kind of fearless journalist who had no problem diving headfirst into some of these really murky stories that could involve corruption or misuse of power, and he would get to the bottom of it, and he would publish these articles where he spoke really critically about the government, about police, about anybody really who was in a position of power. But as a result of conducting himself this way, over his 30-year career, Vlado had been threatened with violence many, many times for things he had written or things he was about to write. But even though Vlado knew this Zivana murder case had the potential to once again put him in hot water with the powers that be, he still felt like it was his responsibility to dive into this thing and get to the truth. So, feeling determined, Vlado grabbed his notebook and pen and he walked out the front door of his house and he made the several-minute-long walk over to Zivana's house. And when he got there, her son, Zoran, opened the door, and a few minutes later, Vlado and Zoran were sitting in the kitchen talking about what had happened. Zoran told Vlado all about how he came home and discovered his mom wasn't there, and then he went to the neighbor's house, and they explained how, they had seen Savannah running off to the hospital to go look for Zoran, but Zoran's like, I'm not hurt, I didn't get into a car accident, what's going on here? And as Zoran spoke, Vlado took lots of notes and asked lots of follow-up questions, and by the end of this interview, when Vlado felt like he knew everything there was to know about Savannah, he felt like he actually had a pretty good working theory as to what actually happened to Savannah. And the reason he felt like his theory could be accurate had to do with what Zoran told Vlado his mother did for a living, that she was a cleaning lady. Now, it took Vlado a couple of days to put together his story. He had to go out and interview dozens more people in the neighborhood. But finally, on May 19th, so just 3 days after Savannah was found murdered, Vlado published his story in the newspaper. And the story's explosive headline read, "A Serial Killer Stalks Kosovo." Did you know that this YouTube channel is not the only place where we post strange, dark, and mysterious content? No, we also have the
What do y'all think so far?
podcast, which has over 180 episodes.
What do y'all think so far? I'm thinking... I mean, did the police not interview the son? I mean, I hate to sound so, I hate to sound like shitty or something, but like, usually someone dies, the first people they're interrogating is the loved ones. Did the police get with Zoran, the son? Not saying it was him, but I mean, you gotta turn over every fucking stone, really. Or maybe, she's a cleaning lady, so don't want to speak ill of this Savannah lady, but like, maybe she was cleaning and like, how like, it's not outside the realm of possibility, and you've heard about it before, like these hotel cleaning ladies, maybe like one of the residents of the hotel that's staying there asked them for like sexual favors in exchange for money, and because they're just a cleaning lady, they probably don't make all that much, and they engage in this activity with this person or this stranger. That's happened in the past. It probably still happens today, right? A little extra cash for not that much work, right? And it sure as hell beats whatever minimum wage paycheck you're getting from just being a regular cleaning lady. So maybe she got involved with someone, and this someone felt a little stronger than she did, after they slept together, and she's like, no, I don't want to do this. I probably should have never done that in the first place. That's not me. That's not the kind of woman I am. And he's like, no, fuck you, bitch. We're going to be together and stuff like that. And then orchestrated this whole accident thing to make her leave the house so that he could have an opportunity to kill her. Maybe a crime of passion. A lover's quarrel. Maybe it's like some fucking stalker type dude that wanted her attention, had her attention, and then she no longer gave him the attention. And I'm spitballing here, just coming up with theories, and I don't know. We're gonna continue. I would look into the sun a little bit more. Would look into the sun a little bit more, because this isn't my first fucking rodeo, dog. Like, there's been times where like, oh, there's no way it could be the son. There's no way it could be the daughter. There's no way it could have been the husband. But do a little digging, a little investigation, and that's exactly who it fucking was, right? So. All right, let's continue.
In the story, Vlado says that Savannah's murder was very likely not an isolated killing. Instead, her murder was likely linked to 2 other murders of 2 other women. And these 2 other victims looked an awful lot like Savannah, literally.
He's got a type.
They were poor, older women who were also cleaning ladies. And so that was why when Vlado was talking to Zoran, and Zoran described how his mother was, what she did for work, what she looked like, that Vlado started to remember these other victims, and he put it all together. The other 2 victims were 64-year-old Mitra Simjanoska, who was murdered in 2005, and the other victim was 56-year-old Lubitsa Lukoska, who was murdered in 2007.
So that's the type. older, female, over the age of probably 50, not a lot of money, cleaning lady. That sets the type for this kind of for this serial killer. Then again, you know, what I just said is probably all the way fucking wrong. Crime of passion. But I mean, hell, who's to say it's not outside of the realm of possibility that he was just in love with all these fucking ladies and just killed them, right? Like, just loved them, had sex with them, killed them, right? Or he tried sexual advances, they weren't having it, killed them, and he only goes after a specific kind of person, specific kind of female. So, anyways, I'm gonna stop talking. I'm sorry. Crime of opportunity?
Now, Vlado's story was totally explosive because what he's saying is that there is a serial killer that is on the loose in this town. But this story was also highly explosive because Vlado spoke very critically about the police who were involved in this investigation. Specifically, he pointed out that the 05 and 07 murders of those two other women, those had been totally mishandled because arrests had been made in at least one of those cases, and clearly whoever they arrested was innocent.
Not the guy.
And so the police just totally dropped the ball, at least in Vlado's opinion. And when the police read Vlado's story, they were very upset at him because he was so critical of them. However, the police also did see that Vlado had managed to uncover a lot of new details from all of his interviews with witnesses and people in the neighborhood that did seem to paint a picture of this potentially really being a serial killer, not individual isolated killings. And so the police, based on Vlado's story, would actually begin investigating a serial killer in their midst. They linked all three murders and they began basically a new investigation.
Yo, what if the serial killer is within the ranks of the police department?
However, at the same time they began this new investigation, Vlado began to notice that he was being tailed all the time by police. He would be out in town doing his job, reporting and interviewing people, and there'd just be a police officer standing somewhere in the distance watching him. But Vlado had anticipated that no matter what, he was likely going to face some sort of blowback from the police.
Obviously.
And so he just kind of accepted that they were going to watch him and maybe try to intimidate him, but it wasn't going to bother him because he had done his job. He had reported the story the best that he could. And if they wanted to watch him from a distance, they could do that. By early June, so about 2 weeks after Zavana had been found murdered, the police, in this new serial killer investigation they were doing, had narrowed down their suspect pool, which was in the hundreds, down to just 3 people. And they felt like they were very close to making an arrest. About a month later, on June 20th, so by this point Vlado is still being trailed by police all the time, but the police have not come out publicly and said anything about the serial killer case. They're just continuing their investigation. But on this day, June 20th, Vlado's editor at the newspaper got a call from a police officer telling the editor they were about to make an arrest in the serial killer case. And as soon as their conversation ended, the editor called Vlado to tell him the news. But when he called Vlado, Vlado didn't pick up, which was very unusual. Vlado always answered his calls. And the editor was also thinking to himself how strange it was that this officer had contacted him.
Exactly, because they weren't giving up any information. And they were actually mad that all this was going on. You're mad at you're mad at this dude because of his article and because of the information that he's putting out there. Yet you willingly call. It almost seems like the police is protecting one of their own. That's just what it smells like for right now.
And not Vlado. Like, why aren't you going to the guy writing the stories and telling him about this new development? Why are you coming to me? The editor would continue to try calling Vlado several more times, but Vlado never answered. And so ultimately, the editor just kind of assumed that Vlado must be busy, interviewing someone.
No, I think Vlado got by the cops. Or by a cop. Probably the guilty cop. This is all pointing to a police officer, I feel. I could be completely wrong. Watch it be some crazy fucking plot twist.
Or maybe more likely, he had already learned about this imminent arrest and he was on scene ready to capture in real time this arrest that was about to take place. Meanwhile, on a quiet street in Kosovo, the police had surrounded this very modest two-story home that was very overgrown up front. It was surrounded by tall fir trees, and all the windows had heavy drapes covering them up. And then once the police felt like they had totally surrounded this building, a team of officers walked up onto the porch and knocked on the door and yelled out that they were police and whoever was inside to come out with their hands up. And for a moment, it was just totally silent and tense. And then the police on the porch heard footsteps inside the house. You know, they had their guns ready to go, and then the door slowly opened up, and this man, who seemed very unthreatening and kind of confused, stepped out onto the porch, and the police immediately arrested him and took him away.
Bro, I'm telling you.
Minutes later, back at the newspaper headquarters, Vlado's editor got another phone call. And when he answered, it was the same police officer who had called before to warn him about this upcoming arrest. Except this time, the officer was calling to say the arrest had been made, they had caught their serial killer, and then he told the editor the name of the person they arrested. And when the editor heard the name, he dropped the phone in shock. The serial killer was Vlado. It would turn out that Vlado appeared very professional and calm on the outside, but inside...
Bro, what the fuck? Oh my god! Holy shit! What a psychopath! But... Oh my goodness. What?
He was full of rage, specifically at his mother, who he viewed as this terrible, cruel person.
So because you hated your mother, you went on a fucking killing spree, killing any female that reminded you or resembled your mother. Let me guess, his mother was a cleaning lady. Oh my god. I'm sitting here thinking, I was sitting here thinking that it was that police officer. That police officer that was like, oh, hey, we're gonna go make an arrest. Oh, hey, we got the guy. Because at first it almost felt like this police officer was like just trying to lead this journalist in the wrong direction. Like just trying to distance himself or like absolve himself or like create some kind of an alibi. Like, you know, I'm doing my job, so there's no way it could be me. But, bro, holy shit.
And after she died in 2002, Vlado became obsessed with this idea of getting revenge on his deceased mother. And the way he decided he would do that would be by killing random women who just kind of looked and seemed an awful lot like his mother, i.e., they were poor, older, and cleaning ladies.
Yep.
His 3 victims, Mitra in 2005,
and just what a psycho, bro, because like you oh my god. You go through. He really planned this out, man. He really planned this out, and he had a mission, and he could have gotten away with this, man. If you think about it, he could have gotten away with this. We've seen this plenty of times where like the killer or the suspect is literally hiding in plain sight. He is right there. What was that one story of that guy who literally went to the press event? Like the police were doing the police were doing a press conference and taking questions from the media about the killer, and the killer was in the crowd. Like some of these dude, like they're just wow. Jesus Christ. I didn't suspect. And here I was trying to like be smart about it and fucking like come up with like some wild kind of like crazy thing in my own head and like my own theory and stuff like that, and really it was much more sinister than I actually anticipated. That's fucking
in 2007 and Zavana in 2008 had all...
Well, I don't even think that this guy had an ego. I think that he was just like, well, there's no way they're gonna think it's me if I'm investigating, right? There's no way they could possibly look in my direction if I'm the one helping. I'm investigating, bro. I'm giving them information. I'm doing a good deed, right? I'm a good Samaritan. I'm out here, bro. I'm a reporter. I'm a journalist. I do all this stuff. Been doing this for 30 years. I'm the guy, right? I'm trustworthy, right? People look at my articles and my writings, and I'm well respected, right? The police don't like me, but they can get fucked, right? Politicians don't like me, but they can get fucked, whatever, right? But like, I'm assuming that this guy had probably somewhat gained the respect of the local population of this town in Macedonia. So it's just like, dude, holy.
Personally known Vlado's mother. And so Vlado had actually used that connection to gain each of his victims' trust. And then once he had their trust, he would lure them away to strangle, stab, and beat them to death.
And it makes so much sense now because he's a reporter. He's a reporter. What can a reporter do? A reporter can create false narratives. A journalist can create fake news. Hence, the car accident that probably never happened, the injured son that was never injured, causing Zavana to leave the house like he predicted, and then boom, got her. Got her. Like, holy shit.
In Vlado's explosive newspaper story, he lied about a whole bunch of things just to throw the police off. Like, for example, he made up that he spoke to a witness who claimed to have seen Zavana get into a car with two men right before she vanished. Vlado did not see that.
Yeah, and that doesn't even sound like Zavana. I don't even know this lady, but from everything I've heard, that's ludicrous.
That was just a total lie designed to confuse the police. Vlado had also been the one to plant that story on the radio about Zavana's son, Zoran, being in this terrible accident. You know, that had caused Zavana to run out of her house and be vulnerable to be scooped up and killed, which is exactly what Vlado wanted. He had called the radio station and told them about this accident, and because he had previously worked for that radio station, they believed him without doing any fact-checking and broadcast the story.
Because he was trusted. Because he was trusted.
And so really that whole radio broadcast was just a very intentional trap by Vlado to kill Zavana. But what ultimately got Vlado caught was in the article he wrote, he left in some really specific details that the police had not revealed to the public. And so basically by including these in the story, it meant Vlado had an inside scoop into what was really going on. Like, for example, Vlado...
So, wow, yeah, dude, he kind of played himself there. Like, well, the police played him, essentially. So he's giving information, and the police is like, there's no way you could possibly fucking know that shit, dog, because we haven't made that public. It's you. It's you. How would you know that if it wasn't you? This is crazy. Fucker told on himself. He got played by police. And here I was thinking that it was like maybe someone inside the police department, thinking that it was the son. You never really know, man, with these things. It can take crazy turns, but that was a turn I wasn't expecting.
Said that all three of these women who had been killed by the serial killer had been strangled to death by telephone cords that were left at the scene. But again, the police had not revealed that to the public, and so when they read the story, they actually became very suspicious of Vlado and thought he could be involved in these murders. And so when Vlado felt like the police were trailing him just to intimidate him, in reality,
he was under investigation.
The police were trailing Vlado because they thought he could be the murderer, and eventually, when they got a DNA sample from Vlado...
And what a dumbass, too, like, what were you thinking, Vlado? What were you thinking, my dude? That, like, the guy was kind of delusional, really, and he was he probably did have an ego, actually, man. Very, very cocky. Like he was just never gonna get caught, because you think about it, what year did this happen? He murdered someone in 2005 and then murdered someone in 2007, and he's probably sitting here thinking he's hot fucking shit because he hasn't been caught, and he's like, oh, this is too fucking easy, man. This is too easy, and got complacent. It got sloppy.
Was confirmed that their suspicions were right. He was the killer. After Vlado's arrest, he was immediately charged with 2 of the 3 murders, and the police were getting ready to charge him with the 3rd, and they were even looking at a 4th victim, potentially, that maybe Vlado had killed as well, but they weren't entirely sure yet. But on June 23rd, so just 3 days after Vlado's arrest,
He killed himself?
He died in jail
Oh.
in a way that really didn't make any sense. Vlado had drowned in a small bucket of water inside of his jail cell while...
Nah, he was murdered. He was murdered either by either couple of theories here. He was definitely murdered in jail. He was either killed by a cop, a guard, or an inmate. And this inmate, watch him have been killed by an inmate of the son of one of the mothers that he killed. That'd be some shit, right? That'd be crazy, right? Like, homie's sitting in jail, and then homie's in jail, and then, you know, he's had a bad life or whatever. His mom was murdered, and he's sitting in jail, and then in comes Vlado, and then he finds out, like, wait, that's the guy that killed my mom? Are you kidding me? That's the guy? Yeah, I'm taking this guy my fucking self. This guy's done.
There were 3 other people inside of that jail cell with him who all said they didn't notice it happening. Officially, Vlado's death was ruled a suicide, and after his death, all of the murder investigations were closed.
I don't know, bro. I don't know. It, like, drowning your... That's a small tub. That's a small tub. And drowning yourself on purpose, like, I can understand you tie some bricks to your feet and you jump into a fucking lake, not much you can do. But a tub of that size, you know how hard it is to actually drown yourself on purpose? It's almost the same as, like, holding your breath and trying to die. Like, that's extremely fucking difficult and sometimes borderline impossible. I don't think this guy committed suicide. In my opinion, I think he was murdered. And, I mean, good riddance, bro. Dude's a serial killer, right? But, it is really hard to hold your breath trying to self-delete. And it is really, really hard to try and drown yourself when in the back of your head, you know that you have a way out of that. The only way to do that is if you remove any kind of possible way of saving yourself. Like, I read something somewhere one day and watched something. It was like this experiment type thing that it is really hard and damn near borderline impossible for you to hold your breath, for you to try to commit suicide by holding your breath. Because it just doesn't work that way, man. Like, your brain, your body, like, you just can't do it. And so, like, a tub of that size, I don't know. I don't know. And on top of that, 3 guys didn't notice this fully grown-ass man inside of a small tub drowning. I don't know, man. That dog don't hunt for me. Probably an inmate or a guard. That's it. That's crazy.
It's no secret.
Is that this? Okay, that was the end of the video. We're gonna stop it right there. That was crazy. That's absolutely fucking nuts. The plot twist. The plot twist. I love MrBallen, bro. Man, his storytelling is on a completely different level. On a completely different level. He makes it so engaging. He makes it so much fun. He makes it like a true fucking mystery, man. And his delivery is impeccable. Absolutely impeccable. That was fantastic. Let's check some of these comments. This person says, "It always bothered me that everyone knows the Bundys and Dahmers of the world, but no one knows the names or stories of the victims." I mean, that can be said for a lot of stuff, man. Like, Mandy, do you personally remember the names of the people that died in the Oklahoma City bombing? No, you don't, but I guarantee you know Timothy McVeigh's name. And, I mean, we're at fault for that. Yeah, that's our bad, but, I mean, that's just the way it goes sometimes. And now I realize it's a huge part of why I love your storytelling. You give background and voices to the victims. We get to know them and their names. Thank you for what you do. I am from the country this story originates from, and first of all, I want to thank you, MrBallen, for everything you're doing. Absolutely loves channel. Blah blah. It's good to see him cover the tragic story that happened in our small country. With that being said, I heard about this story a few years ago on Bailey Siren's channel, and it unlocked a deep memory I had forgotten about because this happened when I was very young. It was all over the media, but since I was so young, I couldn't really remember it. And that really piqued my interest. Let's see. That has to be the most laughable police cover-up of an apparent suicide I've ever heard. I'm saying, bro, that's not a suicide. It's just not. I mean, and just come out and say it, bro. It's a serial killer. Just come out and say, bro, an inmate got him. Or one of our own went in there and took fucking justice into his own hands, and guess what? We won't even be mad at that officer. Just come out and say it. Don't be vague. Don't dance around it. That shit was not a suicide, bro. It was just not. That's fucking nah. No one's really saying much. They're just giving praise to MrBallen, and for good reason. But no one's actually getting to the nitty-gritty in the comment section. Someone said, no way my country just made it onto this man's channel. Why am I so excited about this? It's a tragedy. But thank you, MrBallen, for covering this. Shed some light on what's happening down here. Much love from our little country of Macedonia. That's fucking wild. Yeah, definitely the most ridiculous thing about that story is the fact that the police actually expected people to believe that it was a suicide.